Hi, my name's Kim, and this is the second part to my series where I am reading books inspired by D&D classes. This episode is going to be a twofer. I'm going to include all of the magical classes into this episode. So we have the warlocks, the wizards and the sorcerers. Originally I had thought about doing a video for every single class, but then I was worried that there was going to be too many similarities between, you know, books about wizards and books about sorcerers. So I decided to combine them together only to realise that there are a lot of books about sorcerers and very few books about warlocks. So I'm going to make it a two-parter still, and it's just going to cover all of those magical classes. And I'm just going to kind of read whatever it is that I'm in the mood for. I have like a mini TBR of books that have cropped up that I think I'd be interested in reading, and the majority of them are high fantasy-esque, so kind of in line with the typical D&D setting. But there are some more modern ones as well. So Awakened by A.E. Osworth comes out at the end of May, and that's on my TBR. Depending on when I post this video, it'll either be included in this one or it'll be included in the next one because I've got it on pre-order. But we have some other ones as well that I'd be interested in reading. One being Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer, which is a massive book. It has mage in the title though, that's why I'm thinking about picking it up. So that's like a small caveat. I don't actually know what it's about, except it's kind of like I was going to say How to Train a Dragon, that's not what I mean. It's kind of like that typical boy meets dragon, they train together sort of thing. It might not even be really about mages, I don't know. I just know that it has mage in the title, and so I thought I'd include it for this video. And you think, considering I planned this for a while, that I would have researched that beforehand, but I didn't. So we move on. Other ones include A Sorceress Comes to Call, Sorcery by Terry Pratchett. I've also got Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps as well on my TBR. We have The Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy. I know this is about trans witches, and I also have a couple of others that I'll kind of just put here that I'm considering. As I said, there's like a TBR, but there's no TBR. It really just depends on what I'm in the mood for reading. So I hope you enjoy part 1 of 2, and I'll see you in the next clip. So I come bearing bad news and good news. The bad news is that I've DNF'd 2 books for this video so far, and the good news is that I finished one and I liked it. So we'll start with the DNFs. I read two, well, I didn't read. I started 2 books, one of which I had planned to originally read for this video, which is Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps by Kai Ashante Wilson. This follows our main character, Demain, who is a sorcerer, which is a demigod in this world, and he's travelling with his band of kind of mercenaries and his captain, who is very mysterious and has some element of magic as well, but that is unknown to the rest of the group that they're travelling with. It's only really Demain that is known as a sorcerer, and shows off a few kind of bits of his skill. I can't tell you much more plot-wise because I didn't get that far. I got about, I think it's maybe 20% into the book. It's only like a short book, it's a novella, but I just was not vibing with it at all. Plot wise, so we spend our first like 2 chapters. The first one's doing this kind of training exercise, introduce you to all the characters so you get a feel for Demain and who Demain's travelling with, and a bit of insight into this captain. And then the next chapter they are travelling, and it kind of just really started to lose me. Like, they go to this town where they have to like hand in the weapons, and there's mercenaries, and I really wasn't feeling it at all, to be honest. I read a few reviews and it was talking about the language feeling a little anachronistic. Don't even know how to say that word. And I do agree, it felt like very modern language for what is meant to be a, you know, high fantasy world, which I don't necessarily think is a problem, because I think that there's probably ways that it can be done and you don't feel like taken out of the story, but I do think that it did take you out of the story a bit, at least for me in this case. So I DNF that one about 20-something%. The other book that I was reading that I wasn't intentionally reading for this video was Lightfall by Ed Crocker. So I had it out of the library, I started it and found out that the whole premise of it is that there was this great awakening where these beasts essentially gained true consciousness and became vampires, werewolves, and this group of sorcerers, in which there's 5 groups of sorcerers. 4 of these sorcerer types all have magic, and this 5th type doesn't have magic. I didn't get far enough to know if there's truth to that, but there's suspicion around that, but they're kind of like seen as the weakest type of sorcerer because there's no magic. But the plot is that there was this war when these greys arrived, and these greys are these mysterious cloaked figures, and it means that all the different groups of people essentially go off to different areas of the land and are quite isolated and are fighting against these greys that they just can't seem to kill. Like the greys are killing them, and so they are hunting for them essentially. And our story follows a range of different characters. We have a lot of different viewpoints, and they're all in first person, which is a little bit of an issue, I think, when you've got as many viewpoints as you do. It's not just like one or two where you're switching back and forth. Like as I'm going through, we have this vampire maid in this like lord's house. We have the lord who's like the head lord himself. We have a werewolf who works with these vampire lords. We have this main sorcerer who is one of the sorcerers with no magic, who leads his own cult, which believes that humans exist because humans exist in their kind of mythos, and so they believe that humans exist, whereas other people don't. And then we've also got a point of view from his like essentially, I was going to say sidekick, that's not the right word, his second in command, because his second in command is now off doing something else. I think we had another point of view in there, and that's just, I got 41% of the way through. The only reason I DNF'd it really is because it was due to return to the library and there was other holdout, and I did not feel strongly enough about purchasing it myself to finish it. If it came back into the library, I'd consider picking it up to finish it, but because the plot was interesting, I am curious about what was going to happen plot wise. There is a lot of different moving parts, but I don't think the writing was great. I think that was kind of the fault with it, due to it in part being because it's first person, but then also because there were these moments that felt a little, I don't want to say childish, but they felt a little like too, it reminded me of The Tainted Cup. That's the kind of vibe that I felt from it, except the writing didn't feel as strong because there was these little jabs and banters through where this one character say, who's meant to be this lord, who's this vampire lord who's hundreds of years old, say something like, I know I'm just going off on a tangent now, but anyway, or something like that. Not quite with those words, but that was the essence of what they were saying, and I was just like, I don't know, it takes you out the story a little bit. I think the plot was interesting, but I didn't have enough motivation to finish it ultimately, and it went back to the library. And realistically, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I always think that when you DNF a book, like, I in theory could DNF any book, even if I was, unless I'm really enjoying it, like I could put down a book and not go back to it and just not think about it again, unless there's something in it that really grips me. So it's really easy to DNF a book, but you don't really realise it until you do it. So yeah, those are my two DNFs, which is not the best start to this video. But the good news is that I finished one book. I was going to film this update yesterday and I didn't get a chance, at which point I hadn't finished it. But I finished A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. We follow our main character Cordelia, whose mother is a sorcerer, or a sorceress, sorry. And her mother puts her under obedience, which is, you know, essentially control, and controls her behaviour, and it's abuse essentially. She's abusing her daughter by controlling her every move. There's no doors allowed to be locked in the house. She has no freedom. She doesn't really know anyone. She's been taken out of school, and she's 14, and her mother decides, well, probably not decides, it's not the right word, but ruins things with her benefactor, and so has moved into a new place where she finds a man who she's going to marry for his money and essentially set Cordelia up. But what Cordelia's mother doesn't expect is that the man she plans to marry has a sister named Hester, who just knows that something is happening, and so Cordelia and Hester and then these other people all kind of come together to essentially do away with Cordelia's mother. I ended up giving it 4. I think the one thing that I can appreciate about T. Kingfisher's writing is I think it is really easy to digest, and I think after having 2 DNFs it was a really great book to just go into. The plot wise, it's relatively simple. I mean, the plot is they need to get rid of Cordelia's mother, and I feel like I don't want to say simpleness, but the ease with which the story is just easily to digest works well. We have such I mean, again, low stakes plots, but the stakes are not necessarily low in this. I've read a couple of other T. Kingfisher books. I've read The Hollow Places, which I gave 4, and I've read Nettle and Bone and the first in the Sworn Soldier series. I don't know why I can remember the name of the series and not the book. What Moves the Dead? I think it's What Moves the Dead. And the other and so those last 2 I only gave 3-star. I think I didn't enjoy the plots as much with those, but I found Sorceress Comes. Actually, I just remembered I also read A House with Good Bones. I don't remember what I gave that though. That might have been 3 or 3.5. So I think T. Kingfisher is one of those authors where I'm willing to read the rest of her work, because I think, again, like, it's one of those type of things where if you have read a lot of dense fantasy, sometimes you need something that's a little simpler to kind of slip into, and I think T. Kingfisher does that quite well. I'm now on my next book, which is Sorcery by Terry Pratchett. This is on my 25 in 2025. It's the next book in Discworld, and so I would like to kind of move through them. I'm reading them in publishing order, so this is book 5 to be published, and it follows the Wizards, or the Wizard kind of is in the Wizard canon, because each of the kind of stories within Discworld are split into different overarching stories, but it actually has a sorcerer in it, spelt slightly differently, but the sorcerer is the 8th son of a wizard. So we find out in the beginning that there is a 7th son of a 7th son, or an 8th son of a 7th son. I can't quite remember, and that makes a sorcerer. And so now this sorcerer is arrived at this famous wizarding school in Discworld and is causing a bit of chaos, and is very powerful. So again, this is going to be one I think is quite easy to read. Terry Pratchett's writing, again, is very easy to read, and so I think that this one will be a nice kind of back-to-back with T. Kingfisher, to get me through past these 2 DNFs. And then we'll see what else I'm going to pick up, because 2 DNFs has kind of thrown off my plan a little bit for this video, and I'm not really feeling up to reading some of my big books that I was planning on reading for this series, so I'll have to make a choice about what it is that I want to get to next and see. So I finished Sorcery by Terry Pratchett. It's going to be a 3-star. There is not much that I can tell you about Discworld series, because so much happens in the stories, that it's just like so many plot lines happening at once. All it is to say is that this one continues within the Wizard series, which the first 2 books, if you're reading in publication order, are also set in, where we follow Rincewind, who is a wizard who previously we meet him. He kind of he's not really a good wizard, and his mysterious luggage, which the only way I can describe it is like essentially a mimic, a sentient box of luggage that goes around and does things, and it is a great character all round. But we're introduced to a couple of new characters. As I mentioned in the previous clip, this one follows a sorcerer, and there is the difference between wizard magic and sorcerer's magic, and just other elements that are going on this time within this story. Again, I can't say too much about the plot without spoiling. I think that when you read the story, there is a kind of moment that happens at the very beginning that leads you into understanding why the sorcerer kind of becomes the way that he does. I think that honestly I could have done with more of that in the actual story, because we don't cover a lot of that, which would have been interesting to read about. I've only read 5 so far, so I've read three stories now about the wizards, 1 about witches and 1 about death, and Death's storylines are my favourite so far. Even though I've only read 1 Death book, Death kind of comes in as a character in a lot of these books, and is just a kind of real comical genius in my personal opinion. And so I'm looking forward to reading more of the Death stories within Discworld. I'm also now only a couple of books away from Guards Guards, which obviously a lot of people rate as a favourite book of theirs, and so I think my soft goal is to hit Guards Guards by the end of the year, because then I'm at least reading 4 Discworld books this year, which is how many I read last year. So it kind of makes it a bit easy for me to try and stay on top of them. In terrible news, my copy of Awakened that is meant to come out literally tomorrow, as of the day that I'm filming this, has been pushed back to July. So I was hoping to maybe get it and you know, get it early, because sometimes Waterstone's pre-orders come out a bit early, although I don't think they have been recently because my last pre-order didn't come early, and I saw something online about people saying that their current pre-orders for other books are coming late as well. That was going to be like my closing one of this video, because I thought, you know, if I've still got time to read it like before I put out the video at the end of the month, so I don't know which book to go for now. I have found 2 Warlock books. I've been looking because I realised that I was severely lacking in Warlocks, to be honest. There was absolutely no Warlocks, and so one is White Trash Warlock, and then the other I've forgotten the name of, but I'll put it here, which is actually the one that's on Kindle Unlimited. So that's probably the one that I'm going to pick up first, because I checked and White Trash Warlock isn't at the library. They don't have it at all, so I can only get either, you know, a physical copy or a Kindle copy. So I probably will go for the one on KU for easier access at the moment. I think that's probably going to be my last book for this video. Since I DNF'd those 2 books, I was like, I need to make sure I'm still reading a decent amount of books for this video, but also because I'm trying to split the video into 2 parts, make sure that I've also got a decent amount for the next video as well, which I'm now going to have to push back until July, because I definitely want to read Awakened for that video. So you can anticipate the next Majors video in this series probably around that time. But in the meantime, I should probably start reading my next book. Hello, welcome to another new angle. I don't know if this is the best angle. I might have to... Okay, I've registered. Hi. I thought I would update you because I started Time Marked Warlock. Yes, I think that's what it's called. Time Marked Warlock. Yeah. By Shami Stovall last night. And it is I'll run through it. We are following a warlock named Adair, who has made a pact with Kronos, who is the god of time in this universe. And him and his brother had both made deals, and it essentially means that they can go back in time to an extent. What they can do is they can mark time, so they can look, like, the first line is essentially that he wakes up and it's like 4:14. That's not what time it is, but it's 4 something in the morning, and so he marks that moment in time, and so at any point during the day he needs to go back. He can go back to that point and progress from that point onwards. It's whenever he most recently marks time. And I think I've said before that time books are not my favourite. I have a bit of an aversion to time books, specifically time loops, time travel. They make me anxious. This one is like different in a way, because it's not, you know, he can only go back to a certain point. He's only going back within 24 hours essentially, and once he passes that point, like once it's been 24 hours, he can't go back, because you know you've passed that point in time. There is a limit to it, which I think makes sense to give you, because, you know, with time travel you could do anything. You could do anything, so there are limits to what he can and can't do. Anyway, the plot is that he gets a knock on the door from this young girl named Bree, whose mother has died and his father has been kidnapped, disappeared, and she needs help. Her mother has always told her to go find Adair and his brother Carter, but Adair's brother Carter has died, and we don't know too much about that other than the fact that he's dead. And so Adair has to decide whether or not he's going to help Bree, and obviously you understand that things unfold and that there are suspicious things that had gone on. Adair was previously a private investigator, which is another reason that I was leaning towards picking it up, aside from the fact that it's got obviously Warlock, and I was trying to read Warlock books. I do like a good investigator, especially if it's like, because I think this is meant to be slightly like neo-noir style. Very much reminds me of Hammers on Bone, where we have this kind of down on his luck kind of older gentleman who's helping this young person. That kind of they have a very similar vibe, and I do like that setting. It's just one that I find interesting, so that's part of the reason why I picked it up. I do think it's a really easy read. I mean, I got through 30-something% last night before I went to bed. I found it very easy to go through. I mean, it's not a problem, but obviously in being a detective and having this time skill, he can go back to kind of reassess situations and figure things out. And so they have gone back, like at the 30% stage, they are still on that first day. They've repeatedly gone back in time because they're uncovering more things as the days of the same day have gone on. And so I don't think that's a problem, because that's the whole premise of his skill, but it does mean that it's slightly repetitive because you are seeing some of these scenes again, but with slightly different angles each time. So yeah, I'm hoping I can finish it because that is the last book that I'll be reading for this video this time around anyway. So I can see myself probably getting through the rest of it maybe today or finish it tomorrow, because there is obviously some large unsolved mystery about what's gone on with Bree's mom, what's mysterious things her dad's been doing, because there is a lot of, I should say, warning for not on page animal death, but there is a lot of dead cats somehow for some reason, and they need to find out why there are all these dead cats. And then obviously we have Adair's backstory, and we also have this little demon, because the way that warlocks work in this universe is that they make a pact with a demon, and they can make up to 5 pacts, but it links the demon to a specific part of their human body until the deal is made. So the crown, the heart, the eyes, I forget the rest, but Adair ends up making a pact to help them be stealthy, essentially, with this trickster spirit. And so from glancing at the reviews when I was looking through, people seem to really like this character. Her name's Cull. She's like a fox trickster spirit, but she can switch to other trickstery forms of animals, and so she's been a cat and she's been a pigeon, because apparently pigeons are devious, which I could agree with, probably. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and I will update you when I have more to say. I just had to jump in because I'm reading right now, and again, I don't want to say it's repetitive, because you know it's always going to be repetitive when you're talking about time travel and you're going back and forth in situations, but they're currently waiting for this person to arrive at this location, and they're in his house, and because there's a 12-year-old girl here, and I hate to say that she's annoying me, but she is a little bit, because she's just like, she's so desperately being like, no, we can't do this, it's gonna hurt this person. And I know it's meant to kind of give Adair Finch like this, you know, his humanity, and make sure that he's not just being careless and reckless and not thinking about other people. Anyway, she's just made bacon because she was hungry in this random guy's kitchen while they're waiting for him to come back when he has some involvement in the death of her parents. And then she's like, oh yeah, I found board games in the cupboard. And they just pulled out Settlers of Catan. And so now he's teaching him how to play Catan. Which, fair play, but also it feels a little bit like a filler scene. But I feel like I had to mention that because I just saw, I was like, board games? Oh, come on. And then it's like Catan. And he's like, what do you mean? Oh, hold on, I've skipped forward too much. What do you mean you trade wood for sheep? What the hell were the kids into these days? So yeah, that's my 54% of the way update. I finished it. It only took me, I don't know what time it is right now. It probably took me about an hour and a half to get through the rest of the book. It's going to be 3 stars. I kind of stand by what I say. I think time in stories is not my favourite, I don't think. As we go through the book, they repeat the same day for basically the entire book, and obviously that helps in uncovering all the different possibilities that occur during this crime. But obviously you need something kind of of substance to happen in each different time loop, so that it's not, you know, it's worthwhile us continuing to move forward. And I didn't really like it that much. At least like the time travel points. I didn't think like the relationship between Bree and Adair was super strong. We obviously have her, she herself is a witch, but she has the ability to access these warlock powers, and she wants to learn, and she's so keen to make sure that everyone stays alive. I kind of feel like the fact that Adair can go back and keep everyone alive, like they go back and they save a dog, and then they go back and then they stop this guy from dying because he has a family. And like, it's not to say that that's not a bad thing, but it also is a little bit of a, she's faced loss in her life. Her mom has died. She obviously is looking to help save her dad, but that's not always going to be the way. And time loops and time stuff, it's set up so that you know that there are chances where people can't be saved, like Adair's brother and like Bree's mother. But within the kind of plot that we see, it's kind of a focus on making sure everyone's saved, and how Adair previously probably wouldn't have cared because he's basically been in depressed and living in kind of squalor ever since his brother has died, to the point where people think he died as well because they've not heard of him all this time. But instead he kind of starts to obviously just change who he is. He freshens up, he makes this effort to save these people. He says that he's going to train Bree. Ultimately, I just don't think the relationship was super strong for me to really like that pairing and continue, because there's more books in the series. I think they're like loosely related to Finch, because I did look at the summaries for the other two, just because I had like a feeling about a potential plot point that would happen in this one that didn't end up happening, which I'm glad. But I just went out of the way just to check the second and third book plot summaries, just in case a name was mentioned. But yeah, so it's going to be 3 stars, and that's going to bring me to an end of the books that I read for this video. So pretty much 3 stars across the board, obviously 2 DNFs, not great. I have still an array of books that I'm hoping to get through for the next one. Awakened, I have The Sapling Cage that I was going to read for this one. I've been really drawn to reading Kindle books right now, so I just didn't get through it this time. So that's on the agenda for next time. I still have The Dragon Mage, if it is indeed about a mage, but again, that's a chunky book and I'm a bit scared to pick it up, to be honest. And then I have a couple of others as well. I've seen so many books about sorcerers in like literally the last 2 days. Again, what is it with sorcerers and people writing about sorcerers? I don't know if it's because people don't want to write about wizards because of you know who, and they want to write about something different, and sorcerer just seems to be the buzzword, but I can't complain, because it definitely will help in giving me an array of books to read for the next video in the series. So yeah, look out for that at some point. I don't know whether I'll do another one in between, because as I said, Awaken doesn't come out until July for me now. So unless that comes out any sooner, then I don't know whether that one will be the first one. I still obviously have a whole other range of videos to do for this series. My last one was Bards. I still have Rogues. That might be maybe the next one, because I have quite a few books that I'd like to read for that, that I've written down already. But the others, I'm still looking for recommendations. I'm still searching. So if you do have any recommendations, let me know, because I'm happy to take them. And I'll see you in my next video.